Jim Jones, the Harlem legend and Dipset veteran, was caught dead in the middle of a full-fledged drug investigation, handcuffed and surrounded by flashing lights. It felt unreal, but the police scanners were working, the sirens were real, and the grainy. Raw footage showed the rapper outside a dimly lit warehouse in what authorities are calling a confirmed drug exchange. Within minutes, social media went crazy. Is this a sit-up? He framed what the hell is going on in the streets as hip-hop fans around the world tried to make sense of it. Rumors were raging in Harlem, but nothing rocked the internet more than what happened next. Camron, Jim's longtime friend, brother-in-arms, and co-founder of Dipset, went silent. His jaw tensed, his eyes tight, and he said it all. It wasn't just betrayal. It was heartbreak. When he finally spoke, that's when the real drama started, because Camron didn't defend him. He didn't deny it, he just said one thing. Jim Jones was arrested in connection with the drug deal, but at first most people didn't believe it. Could the Dipset legend, the man who had risen from the projects to international fame, be involved in something so sordid? The whole story is darker than anyone could have imagined. The internet froze, and there are still unanswered questions. Was this years in the making, or the final crack in a brotherhood built on loyalty? The clip was raw and stark, starting with a shaky, handheld shot likely taken by a nearby pedestrian or security guard's phone. Jim was standing beside a sleek black sub in the lot behind a forgotten warehouse. His silhouette outlined by a lone street lamp. The man he was meeting wore a dark hoodie, his face obscured by the exchange. Everyone expected the usual rumors and petty online chatter, but this time there was no denying it. The grainy footage surfaced within minutes, and the silence from Jim's inner circle only added to the frenzied atmosphere. The internet did what it always does, and in a matter of seconds, social media platforms were ablaze with reposts, reaction videos, and heated debates about whether or not was real. It was evident that a small package had been passed hand to hand, and that a siren in the distance had grown louder by the second. Officers then flooded the scene, their badges glinting as they shouted commands, and the hooded man fled into the night, leaving Jim with no choice but to raise his hands. Did they frame him? Another user asked on Reddit. Hip-hop blogs spun theories. Was this rival Cruz's power play, an inside job planned by the Fee, or had Jim reverted to his old habits? The rumors were unrelenting and unending, and the person everyone wanted to hear from the most was Camron, Jim's longtime friend and collaborator, but Camron remained silent for hours, which only made matters worse. When Camron went live on his private social media account late that night, thousands of people watched almost immediately. There was no ostentatious background or hype beat, just Camron sitting by himself in a dimly lit room, pacing erratically, with a poem in his hand. The only sound was the distant sirens echoing through the city, reminding everyone of the chaos that had seemingly followed Y'all Don't Know the Half. Camron, in a quiet voice, breaking the ice as heavy remarks poured in. People begged him to say more to defend his brother, to provide context, he said. However, Camron just stared at the camera, his eyes displaying a mixture of disappointment, rage, and a deeper sense of betrayal. Rumors started to circulate about what he meant. Some insiders suggested that Camron had attempted to alert Jim months prior, while others asserted that Cam had proof of a more extensive conspiracy. One thing was certain, though. While local reporters waited outside the precinct for a statement from detectives, viewers were waiting for every word in a storm of speculation. By morning, it was reported that Jim was charged with distribution, an intent to distribute an unidentified controlled substance. According to sources, investigators had been watching him for weeks, using surveillance footage, phone records, and undercover informants who allegedly mapped out a network that stretched from New York to Atlanta. The substances involved were reportedly high-end designer pills. An anonymous poster on a well-known forum claimed to have inside knowledge that Jim Jones has been in serious trouble for months. The post read, tour deals kept falling through. New music sales, he got desperate. That's when he started moving favors. Jim Jones was confronted by people offering him thousands of dollars per dose, while others left flowers and handwritten notes begging for his freedom. News vans lined the street and satellite dishes pointed skyward, causing passersby to pause and record the commotion on their phones, adding yet more footage to the ever-growing mountain of content back online. The phrase "moving favors" quickly became a meme. Think people conjectured that it was code for arranging deals and exchanging illegal drugs for cash. Photos from years ago that showed Jim at private gatherings with people now known to law enforcement were examined in detail, and then a leaked text exchange between Jim and an unidentified contact surfaced. The exchange was brief but telling. "Did you deliver the contact?" Jim replied. "Just stay." That one text online communities with no context or timestamp, just the tantalizing proof that something clandestine had been brewing. Conspiracy theorists claimed the government was targeting well-known rappers, framing them as an example, while skeptics pointed to the text as proof of wrongdoing. As quickly as the footage spread, the line between fact and fiction blurred. Another Dipset affiliate, Jules Santana, added to the intrigue by posting an old photo of himself with Jim and Camron, captioned "Loyalty Cuts." A show of solidarity or a subtle jab at Jim's perceived betrayal. The atmosphere was part memorial, part vigil for Jim, with patrons gathered under flashing neon lights. Some wearing Dipset t-shirts, others wearing hoodies with Jim's face printed on them. In parallel, fans Jim's recent lyrics, looking for hidden clues. Lines that once seemed innocuous took on new meanings, such as "I've been moving through shadows," which now sounded like a confession. Every verse became fodder for analysis, and vloggers and podcasters debated the timeline of events, figuring out when the alleged deals might have occurred on the legal front. A mural artist stood at an easel and painted a portrait of Jim behind bars. The words "Free my brother" scrolled in bold letters beneath the mural. Prosecutors were reportedly developing a case that went beyond Jim, potentially identifying co-conspirators and exposing a multi-state operation. Rumor had it that subpoenas had been sent to Love and Hip Hop Atlanta cast members and other reality shows, asking for financial records and communications. The fact that Atlanta connections were involved only? Could Jim's arrest be a part of a larger network crackdown? Camron's voice remained the wild card throughout it all. Fans speculated on social media whether he was negotiating behind the scenes or whether his silence indicated a rift with Jim. A few hours later, he shared a mysterious picture of 2 broken chains on his story without a caption, sparking intense conjecture about whether he was hinting at future freedom or a break from the gym. Insiders revealed that Rashida, a longtime friend and neighbor, had confronted Jim just hours before his arrest. "And I pleaded with him to leave that life." A second video leaked from an unidentified account showed Jim counting stacks of cash on a metal table before slipping something into a pocket. The camera panned upward to reveal a familiar figure leaning against the wall. Camron, his face half in shadow. Rashida's representatives reportedly told a confidant that it was worth the risk when contacted. They issued a statement expressing concern and urging fans not to jump to conclusions. The carefully worded response did little to quell rumors as night fell over Harlem. The clip ended there, illuminated by a flickering bow. Jim looked at Camron and nodded as if seeking approval. Camron then stepped forward, said something inaudible, and left. Jim went back to packing, but the revelation sent shockwaves beyond Harlem. If Camron had been there, even whether he was complicit or if he was the one, Isla, Jim's longtime stylist, hovered anxiously, asking what the hell did he get himself into this time. He said, "I'm clean. I'm done with that life." Martinez looked up, her eyes bloodshot, and there are no paper trails or official indictments yet, but with that video showing Cam there too, man, this is bigger than we thought. Cameron's own camp scrambled to control the narrative. above a record store in Bedford-Stuyvesant. One of them, Jasmine, opened the most recent social media statistics on her laptop. His last live received 2 million views in 50 minutes. And the comments were crazy. Is he snitching? Did he set him up? Where's his loyalty? She scrolled, her eyes widening. If we don't get ahead of this, Cam's career is toast. We need a statement from Jim, and more crucially, from Cam himself. However, Cam was nowhere to be found. His phone went straight to voicemail, and his social media accounts were silent. Rumor had it that he checked himself into a private retreat upstate, a so-called creative recharge. Insiders conjectured that he was lying low to gather information, or perhaps doubting his own involvement on the side of law enforcement. Sources confirmed an expanded investigation, and an anonymous officer in the narcotics division said that the Fee had been tracking a ring that used celebrity. Jim's name didn't come to light until undercover agents recorded him during several interactions in New York and Atlanta. The video of Jim delivering the package close to the warehouse was only the first step. Detectives also discovered surveillance footage of him entering a hotel suite in Atlanta with 2 men who were later arrested on drug charges. The company used encrypted messaging apps and leveraged industry events for distribution. The cover, 2 traffic designer pills, known on the street as nightmares, was moved covertly. The lead agent informed reporters that it is not a celebrity witch hunt and that there are strong indications of involvement at higher levels. Back in Harlem, Rashida was startled awake by a late-night call from her cousin, a radio promotions worker, who wanted to know what she had seen. She rubbed her eyes and said, "I'm not ready," because Jim is like a brother to her and Pam is like family. That people already did channel reply to that second video, and they're saying he knew about it, and that you're covering it for him. Rashida slammed the phone down, her heart thumping. And she turned on the morning news to see the headlines about the Dipset drama and the questioning of Camron's royalty following the rapper's arrest. An arrest photo of Jim in handcuffs and frowning was displayed on the screen, along with a grandmother still of Cam leaning in and speaking to Jim, demonstrating his conflict between loyalty and self-preservation. She called him for advice, and his tone was calm and measured. Rashida listened, and he said, "This is bigger than all of us. We've got to protect the family, but we also have to respect the truth." If Cam was in that video, he owed an explanation. So what do I do every time Reddit conspiracy theorists piece together timelines from concert schedules to hotels? If Cam's loyalty was real, he'd stand up for Jim. This silence speaks volumes. One user at Streetneen wrote on Twitter, referencing check-ins and interview dates. Another popular thread claimed that a mysterious line in a recent Jim Jones song, "I move silent through the night," was an admission of guilt. Another user retorted, saying he wouldn't put his brother in a bad light as he waited for the truth to come out of one of Dave Swift's preparing his morning show in the city's most prestigious studios. He set up audio clips, highlights from the police press conference. He intended to pit them against each other, asking callers to pick a side. All I know is that he told his engineer that the ratings would soar from the internet to the halls of justice. The story was accelerating, and part 2 ends as Rashida gets ready to take center stage with version of events, juggling the demands of friendship, family, and reputation against the press's ravenous scrutiny. What she says next could change everything once more. Ha ha! I have been asked if I knew about any of this, and the answer is no. Not until I saw it with my own eyes. Jen Jones told me he was working on new music when she stepped onto the makeshift stage set up outside the precinct. She grazed her forehead with trembling fingers before facing the flashing bulbs and anxious faces. A circle of reporters fought for position, microphones thrust forward like hungry creatures. She cleared her throat. Her voice wavered. Filling in for him? Rashida's eyes flickered in agony as she said, "I'm hiding the truth. If he's guilty, I'll be the first to say it." Later that day, lawyers and advisors gathered in a small conference room at Dipset Records, huddled over evidence packets. On one table were pictures of the 2 leaked videos, the security camera footage from the warehouse, the Atlanta hotel suite footage, and printouts of the incriminating text. Jim's lead attorney, Marissa Flores, leaned across the table. One investigator, looking at phone alerts, observed, "They'll try to split the case's Atlanta deals separate from the warehouse meet. We need to prove these points are connected." The team nodded, but tension was high. "If we can show Jim was elsewhere at key times, that footage may be circumstantial," she said, rubbing her temples. In the evening, Camron reappeared and posted a brief audio clip on his verified account that said, "I've always stood by my family. I'm gathering facts. Please be patient." It was only 30 seconds, but it sparked a renewed debate, with fans divided into two camps: those who saw Cam's silence as solidarity and those who saw it as complicity. Hashtags alternated between #Cam for clarity and as part of damage control. Dipset's brand manager set up a meeting with Jim's core supporters, longtime fans, street influencers, and local community leaders. #Cam for Jones. In the meantime, Mend K sat at home scrolling through the craze. He dialed Rashida. "They're tearing me apart." "K," she confessed, "I'm trying to stand for the truth, but they won't let me." Menk exhaled slowly. "K, you did what you had to do, baby. Let the lawyers handle the rest. Keep your head up." After an hour of intense debate, a guest speaker, respected community elder, took the microphone. "We all know that mistakes happen, but we also know that redemption is real." The event was held in a storefront church that was converted into an event space on 125th Street. Posters of Dipset albums hung above a small stage, and there was a single chair for Jim, but no one knew if he would show up. Volunteers distributed bottled water and flyers with the words, "If you believe in redemption," in bold letters. "Rally around someone who lifted this city once before. Let's show compassion." Applause broke out, but skepticism persisted. A cheeky local blogger whispered into a live stream microphone, "Applause doesn't pay legal fees elsewhere." At the same time, a tabloid outlet claimed that viewers had seen Camron in surveillance footage at the warehouse 2 nights prior to the arrest. In response, Camron's publicist released a statement saying that he fully cooperated with law enforcement and that any suggestion to the contrary is untrue, despite the assurance that internet chatter would eventually address these lies. Prank accounts posted mashups of Camron as a detective in trench coats, mimicking every mistake. Amid the public uproar, Jim's family gathered in a small apartment uptown with his mother, aunt, and 2 younger sisters seated around a laptop streaming live coverage. Jim's mother, with her nose flaring, exclaimed, "They treat him like a criminal." In the meantime, back in the courtroom complex, prosecutors prepared their opening statements for the preliminary hearing. Special Agent Robert Hill Cruz reviewed his case file. "We have sworn testimony from the hooded man who fled that night." "Who identified Jim?" His aunt sniffled. "He's always been A young fan shouted, "We got you, Uncle Jim." And others echoed a chorus of encouragement backstage after the event. Jim took a deep breath before responding, "Yes, I was at that warehouse. And yes, I met that man. But what you don't know is..." "Why? I'll explain." This is hell. But I'm not here to plead innocence or guilt. I'm here to tell you I love you and I'm fighting." When a reporter inquired about the alleged designer pills, Jim's jaw tensed. "They paint me with names I don't even recognize. Give me time. Give me a chance." As midnight drew near, the controversy, SHOWED, no signs of abating. A third video clip was leaked. This time a voice memo purportedly from Jim to Cam that was recorded days prior to the meeting. The audio was muffled, but the words were in the digital realm. An underground podcast hosted by 15 agents examined every angle, speculating on wiretaps, informants, and the potential for a plea deal. Callers shared conspiracy theories ranging from ties to international cartels to inside jobs by rival music executives. The clip ended abruptly, leaving viewers to wonder if it was evidence of a conspiracy or another planted distraction. The world waited with bated breath for the next shocking twist as the fight for truth and loyalty escalated. The courtroom buzzed with tension as the preliminary hearing opened the following morning with rows of chairs filled with spectators, journalists, and curious onlookers. Jim Jones and Camron's friendship, once celebrated as hip-hop royalty, now hung in the balance, part to betrayals and shifting allegiances. Part 3 saw the lines between right and wrong further blur as the fight for truth and loyalty escalated. The prosecutor's voice was steady, but every detail caused the gallery to gasp. He concluded by outlining the charges, distribution, and intent to distribute a controlled substance across state lines, assisted and embedded by an accomplice known only as Tablak. The surveillance operation that resulted in Jim's arrest involved weeks of wiretaps, undercover purchases, and overnight stakeouts. He cited the shaky warehouse footage, the Atlanta hotel clip, and the leaked text messages, declaring that there is no concrete proof that the substance exchange was unlawful. We have no lab results, no chain of custody documents. And my client, to the presumption of innocence outside of the law, Flores, Jim's attorney, stood up to begin her rebuttal. She said that the evidence shows a pattern of transactions that indicates a larger distribution network. When Cruz sat down, murmurs filled the room. Flores acknowledged some of the evidence, but she questioned its relevance, saying that the government's case is based largely on conjecture and circumstantial video. The story had transcended the personal and had become a cultural moment about race, celebrity, and due process. Later that day, in a dimly lit conference room at Jim's law offices, Flores and her team pored over discovery materials hidden among pages as news bands circled the courthouse like vultures and anchors reported live flashing headlines that would dynasty would crumble and whether loyalty would survive scandal. Tweets divided into two camps, those calling for swift justice and those opposing a rush to judgment. An unredacted surveillance report that named a key witness who had not yet been made public. The report named T.B. Black by his real name, Terrence Tony 2 Williams, along with his cooperation agreement. It seemed that Williams had flipped testimony that would be forthcoming, placing Jim and Camron together on multiple occasions. This revelation hit her like a punch to the gut, and she rubbed her forehead and leaned back, slowly exhaling. "We have to call this into question," she said. "Compromised. We need to schedule a motion to exclude his testimony or at least disclose the terms." Her assistant nodded and started drafting the necessary filings, but Camron remained eerily absent from public view. Rumor had it that he had been called as a material witness, but his attorneys denied it, claiming that he was only helping the investigation. According to a statement that circulated under his name, "I have cooperated fully with law enforcement, and I look forward to telling my side when the time is right." But Voigt's online question was whether his silence was a ploy or an indication of involvement. At one point, a minor altercation between opposing factions forced police to step in inside the courthouse. The defense called a surprise witness, Leland, a stylist, who reluctantly took the stand while wearing a simple outfit. Back on the streets, a makeshift memorial for Jim had developed into a protest camp. Supporters brought tents, speakers, and boomboxes playing classic Dipset songs. They claimed that Jim was being used as a scapegoat while real kingpins went free. As Weah stepped down, Flores stood up to conclude the defense's case. She begged the judge to consider the contradictions and the dubious credibility of T. Black, painting a picture of a man under oath. She testified that she had seen Jim at his studio the night of the warehouse meeting working on artwork for his next album, supported by receipts and time-stamped photos. Her account contradicted the prosecution's timeline, suggesting the footage might have been doctored or misstated. The judge paused to review his notes, set the date for a formal arraignment, and reminded both sides that the evidence was still being processed. He advised caution, noting that the matter had significant community impact and urging media restraint. When he adjourned, a heavy silence hung in the air, and reporters swarmed the defense table, shouting questions. Jim gave a brief nod, but he was not planning a criminal enterprise and was struggling to rebuild his career. Flores signaled her client's right to silence by holding up a hand. That evening, Rashida was at her apartment with Manx and a few close friends. The atmosphere was solemn as they watched clips from the hearing on a small television set. She turned to Men VCs and said, "I don't know how he's going to make it through this." He put a hand on her shoulder and said, "We're here for him. We'll fight this outside the courthouse, Camron." Promotional graphics hinted that Cam would clear the air and share the untold story. When a publicist announced that he would appear in public the following day for an exclusive interview on a major network, fans and critics alike wondered if Cam would use the opportunity to shift blame, reveal shocking new details, or defend Jim.